There's a character people have been talking about for centuries. A being who has traveled through time with disconcerting ease, who fascinated the Vikings, intrigued historians, and who today generates millions of views on your screens. That character is Loki. And I'm warning you right now, what you're about to hear in this video will probably change the way you look at this character, whether you're a Marvel fan or a complete newcomer to Norse mythology. So, get comfortable, because we're about to take a round trip between the Asgard of the Ancients and Marvel Studios. And the least we can say is that the ticket isn't exactly a smooth ride. Let's start from the beginning. Loki, in Norse mythology, is a figure that even specialists struggle to put in a box. He is the god of malice, discord, and illusions, son of the giant Farbauti and Laufey, father of several terrifying creatures, including the serpent Jormungand, the wolf Fenrir, and the goddess of the realm of the dead, Hel. Up to this point, it reads a bit like the resume of a failed candidate for the position of benevolent god. But what makes Loki truly unique in all of Norse mythology is this ability he has to be both inside and outside at the same time. To belong to the gods without really being one. To help without really wanting to help. Loki is not an Aesir god by birth. He is the son of the giant Farbauti, whose name literally means he who strikes dangerously, and of Laufey, a mysterious figure whose exact nature is still debated among mythologists. Imagine being born with such a family tree and still having to show up every morning to work with gods who look down on you. That's Loki's story. And yet, both the Poetic Edda and the Prose Edda by Snorri Sturluson mention a blood pact between Loki and Odin, binding both figures in a sacred and inviolable bond. This pact actually explains why the gods tolerated Loki's misdeeds for so long. Excluding a blood brother would have been a transgression of Norse honor. In other words, Odin had signed the hardest contract to cancel in the history of the cosmos. What truly sets Loki apart in this pantheon of muscle-bound warriors and radiant goddesses is his intelligence and his gift for transformation. No other god possesses such mastery of shapeshifting. Loki can become a salmon to escape the wrath of the gods, a mare to trick a giant builder, a fly to spy, an old woman to refuse to weep for Baldr, or borrow Freya's feather cloak to fly. He is the only god in Norse mythology who can literally be anyone. And in the case of the mare, the story goes even further, since Loki in that form would give birth to Sleipnir, Odin's famous eight-legged horse. A detail you clearly weren't going to see in any Marvel film. And for good reason. Now let's get into the specifics and look at what Loki actually does in the mythology. Because here too, things are far more nuanced than you might expect. He took part in the construction of Asgard's walls, caused the kidnapping and then the return of Idun, gave Sif a golden head of hair after shaving her head, helped retrieve the lost hammer Mjolnir, brought Odin the spear Gungnir, and Freyr the ship Skidbladnir. Which means that without Loki, the Norse gods would have lost their fortress, their hair, their weapons, and their boat. He's the kind of person you need even when you can't stand him. The service provider you call while cursing under your breath, but who you ring back 2 hours later because he's the only one who knows how things actually work. But here's where things get genuinely complicated. Loki is, in a sense, the knot in the straight thread that binds the gods to their world, the ultimate flaw that leads to their final disappearance. And that flaw has a name: Baldr. Baldr is the god of goodness, beauty, and light, the darling of all Asgard. His mother Frigg made every element of nature promise never to harm him. Every single thing. Except mistletoe, considered too small, too insignificant to be consulted. And Loki, of course, finds out. He guided the hand of Hod, the blind god, to throw the mistletoe dart that killed Baldr on the spot. That's the kind of low blow that, even in a mythology well accustomed to dirty tricks, is considered to have crossed a line. And it doesn't stop there. Disguised as the witch Thok, he refused to shed a single tear for Baldr's return among the Aesir, condemning the god to remain in the realm of the dead forever. If you're enjoying what you're hearing so far, and you don't want to miss any of our upcoming videos on the great figures of mythology, now is the perfect time to subscribe and hit the bell. It takes 2 seconds, and it makes a real difference for a channel like this one. All right, let's keep going. Following Baldr's murder, the god's patience finally reaches its absolute limit. Loki was then locked in a dark cave. His son Vali was turned into a wolf, who immediately attacked his brother Narvi and killed him. Narvi's entrails were then used to bind Loki beneath the jaws of a serpent dripping with venom. It's a punishment of remarkable cruelty, even by Norse mythology standards. But Sigyn, whose name means friend of victory, stayed by Loki's side throughout his punishment, tirelessly holding a cup above his face to protect him from the poison. It is one of the most moving images in the entire Norse corpus. The wife of a god of chaos, condemned for his own crimes, who remains faithful to him until the very end. And each time she has to step away to empty the cup, Loki, burned by the venom, screams so loudly that he triggers earthquakes. Next time you feel a tremor, you'll know exactly what's going on. And then comes Ragnarök, the end. When the hour of Ragnarök arrived, Loki, breaking free from his prison, forgot Odin's hospitality. He was the one who raised the army of evil and the giants against the gods who had once welcomed him. No redemption here, no last-minute change of heart. The mythological Loki follows his trajectory all the way to its conclusion. After Ragnarök, leading the hosts of Hel's realm, Loki faced Heimdall in a battle from which neither of them survived. Two sworn enemies who end up destroying each other. It's Shakespeare before Shakespeare existed. Now let's talk about the Loki that millions of people discovered through Marvel, the one brought to life by Tom Hiddleston since 2011. And let's look at what the screenwriters kept, what they invented, and where the two versions meet, or frankly, contradict each other. The first difference, and it's the most fundamental one, concerns origins and family. In the films, Loki is a god from the world of the Jotuns. Loki is the son of Laufey, king of the frost giants of Jotunheim, who died in combat against Odin, who then decided to adopt Loki and raise him alongside his biological son, Thor. In the mythology, it's a different story entirely. No text mentions that Loki was Thor's brother, or that he was adopted by Odin. The Loki of the ancients is Odin's blood brother, not his adopted son. There is no fraternal rivalry with Thor built around a painful family legacy. And on top of that, in the Marvel version, Loki's father Laufey is actually the god's mother in the original mythology. Marvel therefore reversed the gender of one of Loki's parents. A detail, perhaps, but one that illustrates just how much creative freedom the screenwriters took with the original texts. The second major difference is the very nature of the character. In the Marvel universe, Loki starts out as a supervillain, sometimes depicted as an anti-hero, consumed by jealousy toward Thor and a desire to seize the throne of Asgard. The mythological Loki, on the other hand, isn't really driven by political ambition in that sense. In the Norse mythological tales, Loki is described as a scheming coward who only cares about superficial pleasures and his own survival. He loves pulling pranks. He's remarkably creative when it comes to putting people in uncomfortable situations, and he finds it all extremely funny. He's a trickster, not a conqueror. The trickster figure is actually a universal archetype found in many mythologies. Hermes and Odysseus among the Greeks, Seth among the Egyptians, and the coyote among certain Native American tribes. Loki is a Norse version of this timeless archetype. The character who disrupts the established order not out of ideology, but out of pleasure and sheer nature. That said, Marvel accomplished something quite remarkable with this character, and credit should be given where it's due. One area where Marvel genuinely succeeded is in making Loki a far more complex and less clear-cut character than most comic book figures. And that's precisely what aligns with the Loki of the ancient texts. In both cases, you have a character you can never permanently place in the good or bad column. Loki keeps his essence in the MCU and the broader Marvel universe. The cunning, the deception, the manipulation, the shape-shifting, the ability to turn situations to his advantage. All of that is authentically Loki, whether you're reading Snorri Sturluson's Edda in the 13th century or streaming Disney Plus from your couch in 2024. On the question of transformation, Marvel partially honored the spirit of the myth. In the series, Loki can quite easily change his appearance and gender. But in the mythology, this goes far beyond human form. In one of the many stories found in the Edda, Loki transforms into a mare and is impregnated by a powerful stallion. You can easily understand why Disney didn't include that in a mainstream film. But the fact that the series openly addresses Loki's gender and identity fluidity, notably by introducing the female variant Sylvie, is actually far more faithful to the spirit of the original myth than many critics wanted to acknowledge. The third and most significant divergence, where the gap between the two versions becomes the widest, is the character's ultimate trajectory. In the Marvel films, and especially the Thor trilogy, we see Loki on the side of the villains, and then gradually, episode by episode, he shows signs of repentance. None of that has any connection to what the Norse legends actually tell us. The mythological Loki doesn't seek redemption. He doesn't end up as a hero, however flawed. He ends up as the irreconcilable enemy of the gods who once welcomed him, personally leading the army that will trigger the end of the world. Rather than redemption, Loki seeks, alongside his children Fenrir, Jormungandr, and Hel, to bring about the destruction of the Norse cosmos. It's a radically different narrative choice, but understandable in the context of a franchise that needs to sell merchandise and keep a broad audience invested through to the next installment. The Disney Plus series pushed the exploration of the character even further, placing the action within a cosmic organization called the Time Variance Authority, tasked with monitoring the correct flow of time. The series follows a Loki who died at Thanos' hands at the start of Infinity War, but who is still alive in an alternate reality created in 2012 during the Avengers time heist, and who, after seizing the Tesseract, is apprehended by the TVA. This is a narrative framework that has no anchor in Norse mythology whatsoever, but it allows for something genuinely interesting. Taking a fundamentally chaotic character and making him the protagonist of a story where he has to face himself, in the most literal sense, by encountering his own variants. It's not Norse mythology, but it's solid storytelling. Perhaps the most fascinating detail in this entire story is that Loki's name itself carries this fundamental ambiguity. The philologist Eldar Haida noted that in later Icelandic usage, the common noun Loki means knot or tangle, and that the name is also used for spiders in a metaphor comparing their webs to fishing nets. A knot. Something that blocks, that entangles, that creates resistance where you'd prefer a clear path. That's precisely what Loki is in the mythology, the knot in the god's thread, the one without whom many things would never have moved forward, but who ultimately ends up entangling everything beyond repair. What unites both versions of Loki, the one from the ancients and the one played by Tom Hiddleston, is this unique ability to command attention. Nobody looks at Loki with indifference. Not the gods of Asgard who tolerate him in spite of everything, and not the audiences around the world who have made him one of the most beloved characters in contemporary cinema. There's a reason for that. Loki embodies something deeply human, that tension between belonging and being excluded, between helping and betraying, between the mask we wear and what we truly are. Without chaos, there is no change. Without destruction, no rebirth. In a mythology that ends with an apocalypse followed by a new world anyway, Loki might just be the most honest character of all. He does exactly what his nature dictates, all the way to the end, without compromise and without apology. So the next time you watch Tom Hiddleston smile with that characteristic air of pretense, or come across an Edda story where Loki has once again plunged the gods into trouble before rescuing them through a stroke of genius, think about all of this. This character travels across centuries and cultures with the same ease he changes shape, and he shows every sign of continuing to do so for a very long time. Some mythological figures don't die, not even at Ragnarök.